Throughout the ages, certain knowledge has been deliberately concealed from the masses, truths deemed too powerful or disruptive to the established order. Among these hidden treasures lies the Book of Enoch, a text of profound spiritual significance that was systematically removed from canonical scriptures, despite its original reverence among early spiritual communities. The Book of Enoch was not simply overlooked. It was intentionally banned and excluded from the official biblical canon at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. The religious authorities of that time claimed the text contained dangerous theological innovations. But the real reason was far more profound. The book revealed cosmic truths about human origins that threatened the control systems of organized religion. What made this ancient text so threatening? The Book of Enoch speaks of celestial beings, interdimensional realms, and cosmic hierarchies that directly interacted with humanity. It reveals that humans are not merely physical beings, but spiritual entities of celestial origin, temporarily experiencing the material realm. This fundamental truth undermines the notion that we require intermediaries or institutions to connect with the divine, as our very nature is already divine in essence. The suppression continued through centuries as religious authorities recognized that people aware of their true spiritual nature would be less likely to submit to external authority or fear-based control systems. The Vatican's extensive secret archives still hold ancient manuscripts that corroborate Enoch's accounts, yet access remains severely restricted to this day. Consider how Cayce's readings consistently affirm the validity of Enoch's teachings, particularly regarding the soul's celestial origins. His psychic insights revealed that the Book of Enoch contains crucial keys to understanding human consciousness that religious institutions weren't prepared to acknowledge, mainly because these revelations would diminish their role as gatekeepers to salvation. What makes the Book of Enoch particularly significant is its detailed account of the pre-Adamic world and the complex spiritual ecosystem that existed before recorded history. It speaks of advanced civilizations and cosmic visitors that shaped human development, concepts too radical for ancient religious authorities to incorporate into their carefully constructed narratives. The book describes how celestial beings known as the Watchers shared forbidden knowledge with humanity, including astronomy, metallurgy, and cosmology. This direct transfer of divine knowledge contradicted the hierarchical model of spiritual revelation that empowered religious authorities as exclusive interpreters of divine will. Most threatening of all was Enoch's detailed description of the afterlife and the soul's journey, accounts that differed significantly from the simplistic heaven and hell paradigm that religious institutions use to maintain spiritual control. By describing a complex, multidimensional afterlife with numerous spiritual realms, Enoch undermined the binary reward-punishment system that kept believers in a state of perpetual spiritual anxiety. The most revealing passages in the Book of Enoch concern the nature of consciousness itself, describing humans as fragments of celestial light, temporarily clothed in physical form. This understanding completely transforms one's relationship with mortality, suffering, and the perceived limitations of human existence. When you recognize yourself as an eternal spiritual being having a temporary human experience, the fear-based control systems lose their power over your consciousness. The Book of Enoch unveils profound truths about our spiritual heritage that challenge conventional understanding of human origins. According to these ancient texts, your soul did not originate on earth but descended from celestial realms, a spark of divine consciousness that chose to experience the material dimension for spiritual growth and cosmic understanding. The Watchers, described in Enoch's writings, were not merely angels in the traditional sense, but interdimensional beings who existed at the threshold between the material and spiritual planes. These entities, described as those who watch, were cosmic observers assigned to monitor humanity's spiritual development without direct interference. However, certain Watchers became fascinated by human experience and chose to interact more intimately with the physical realm, a decision that would profoundly impact humanity's spiritual trajectory. The texts reveal that 200 Watchers, led by Samyaza, descended to Mount Hermon and took an oath to integrate themselves into human society. They became the progenitors of advanced knowledge, teaching humans astronomy, meteorology, herbology, and various metaphysical arts that accelerated civilization's development. This transfer of cosmic knowledge explains the seemingly spontaneous emergence of complex civilizations that archaeologists struggle to explain through conventional evolutionary models. What makes this account particularly significant is its explanation of the dual nature of human consciousness. The Book of Enoch suggests that your soul possesses a cosmic memory, an innate knowing that precedes your physical incarnation. This explains the universal human experience of feeling like spiritual exiles or strangers in the material world, a sense that you belong somewhere beyond the confines of earthly existence. The Watcher's interaction with humanity created a profound energetic imprint on human consciousness, activating dormant spiritual capacities and accelerating soul evolution beyond the natural progression intended by cosmic design. This intervention explains why humans possess capabilities far beyond what would be necessary for mere survival. Artistic expression, philosophical inquiry, and spiritual yearning that transcend basic evolutionary needs. Your soul's cosmic origin explains the innate human longing for transcendence and the persistent feeling that material existence, however pleasant, remains somehow incomplete. This spiritual homesickness, what philosophers call divine nostalgia, is not a psychological quirk, but a genuine remembrance of your soul's celestial heritage. The veil of forgetting that accompanies physical incarnation was designed as a necessary component of the soul's journey, allowing for authentic free will and genuine spiritual growth uninfluenced by complete cosmic awareness. The Book of Enoch describes how each soul enters physical embodiment carrying celestial light, divine potential waiting to be realized through earthly experience. This explains why spiritual awakening feels more like remembering than discovering something new. The journey of spiritual growth is actually a process of reclaiming your original awareness, gradually dissolving the amnesia that accompanies physical incarnation. What religious authorities found most threatening about these teachings was the implication that divinity exists within you as your very essence, not as an external force requiring institutional mediation. If humans recognize themselves as embodied celestial beings with direct access to cosmic wisdom, what need would there be for hierarchical religious structures or gatekeepers to divine truth? The metaphysical technology described in the Book of Enoch provided practical methods for accessing this inner divinity, techniques of consciousness expansion that religious authorities later condemned as sorcery or forbidden knowledge. Yet these practices were simply means of reconnecting with your soul's cosmic origins and activating dormant spiritual capacities inherent in human consciousness. The Watcher's greatest gift to humanity was not technological knowledge, but the awakening of spiritual self-awareness, the recognition that consciousness transcends physical form and continues beyond bodily death. This understanding fundamentally transforms how you relate to existence, revealing that your identity is not defined by material circumstances, but by your eternal essence as a multidimensional being of light, temporarily experiencing physical reality. The original understanding of the soul, as described in Enoch's texts, reveals that you are not a physical being having occasional spiritual experiences, but a spiritual being engaged in a temporary physical experience. This profound reversal of perspective liberates consciousness from identification with the limited self and reveals your true nature as a cosmic traveler on an eternal journey of spiritual evolution through multiple dimensions of reality. The Book of Enoch presents a sophisticated understanding of reincarnation and spiritual accountability that was deliberately removed from mainstream religious teachings. Unlike the simplistic view of a single lifetime followed by eternal reward or punishment, Enoch described a cosmic system of soul evolution through multiple embodiments, each physical life serving as a classroom for spiritual growth and karmic resolution. Within these ancient texts lies a profound truth. Your soul undertakes numerous journeys through physical embodiment, each incarnation building upon the spiritual lessons and karmic patterns of previous lifetimes. What religious authorities labeled as judgment was actually described by Enoch as a natural process of soul review, a compassionate assessment of consciousness that determines the most appropriate circumstances for continued spiritual evolution, not eternal punishment. The Book of Heavenly Luminaries section of Enoch describes celestial record keepers who maintain what modern spiritual teachers call the Akashic records, an energetic archive containing the complete soul history of every being. During the period between incarnations, your soul enters a state of expanded awareness where it reviews its experiences with perfect understanding and compassionate self-assessment, free from the ego-based justifications that characterize physical existence. This process of soul review is not conducted by an external judge, but by your own higher consciousness in consultation with spiritual guides who assist in planning the circumstances of your next incarnation. The soul chooses specific challenges, relationships, and limitations that will provide opportunities to resolve karmic patterns and develop spiritual qualities not yet fully expressed. What appears as suffering or injustice from the limited perspective of a single lifetime reveals itself as purposeful soul education when viewed through the lens of multiple incarnations. Enoch describes how souls between embodiments exist in various mansions or dimensional frequencies that correspond to their level of spiritual development. These are not permanent destinations, but temporary abodes where souls integrate the lessons of previous incarnations and prepare for new physical experiences. The soul's vibrational quality, determined by the sum of its choices, intentions, and level of spiritual awareness, naturally resonates with the appropriate dimensional frequency, without external judgment imposing this placement. What makes these teachings particularly revolutionary is their emphasis on personal spiritual responsibility, without the fear-based mechanisms of eternal punishment. According to Enoch, the soul's journey spans vast cosmic cycles called aeons, with each physical incarnation representing a brief but crucial opportunity for consciousness evolution. The soul naturally seeks balance and completion, drawn to experiences that will heal fragmentation and expand awareness until it achieves what Eastern traditions call liberation from the wheel of rebirth. Religious authorities recognize that this understanding of spiritual progression through multiple lifetimes would undermine their power, as it removes the urgency of salvation within a single lifetime and places spiritual authority within the individual soul rather than external institutions. The cosmic time frame of soul evolution, described in the Book of Enoch, directly contradicted the theological premise that one lifetime determines eternal destiny, a concept that generated the fear necessary to ensure compliance with religious authority. Enoch's description of the afterlife journey reveals that what appears as punishment is actually purification, a necessary cleansing of lower vibrational energies that allows the soul to ascend to higher states of consciousness. This process is not punitive but restorative, designed to prepare the soul for more expanded states of being. The metaphorical fires described in religious texts refer to the intense energetic transformations that dissolve attachments and illusions accumulated during physical existence. Most significantly, Enoch reveals that souls ultimately judge themselves through the natural law of energetic resonance. Upon physical death, your consciousness automatically gravitates toward the vibrational frequency that matches your spiritual development. No external judgment required. This self-sorting process explains the various heavens and hells described in religious literature, which are actually states of consciousness rather than locations. The Book of Enoch describes how advanced souls may choose to reincarnate not from karmic necessity, but from compassionate choice, returning to physical embodiment to assist in humanity's collective spiritual evolution. These voluntary returns explain the presence of spiritually awakened individuals throughout human history who catalyze consciousness expansion within the collective. Their missions often involve retrieving and reintroducing spiritual knowledge that has been suppressed, including the very truths contained in the Book of Enoch itself. Through the lens of Enoch's teachings, spiritual evolution is revealed as a natural process of soul maturation across multiple lifetimes, guided by cosmic laws of balance and harmony rather than arbitrary divine judgment. Your soul chooses its own path of development through the experiences it attracts, with each lifetime building upon the spiritual foundation established in previous incarnations. This understanding liberates consciousness from fear-based religious constructs and reveals the profound purposefulness behind the seemingly random circumstances of human existence. The Book of Enoch does not stand alone in its profound revelations about human spiritual nature. It forms part of an interconnected web of suppressed spiritual knowledge that includes numerous texts intentionally excluded from official religious canons. These works, collectively known as apocryphal and Gnostic scriptures, contain spiritual insights so transformative that religious authorities deem them dangerous to institutional power structures. The Gospel of Thomas, discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945, contains striking parallels to Enoch's teachings about the divine nature of human consciousness. When Jesus states, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he echoes Enoch's revelation that divinity resides in human consciousness as its essential nature. Both texts emphasize direct spiritual knowing over institutional authority, with Thomas recording Jesus' words, "Those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed and will marvel and will reign over all." The suppression of these teachings followed a systematic pattern across cultures and time periods. The Gnostic Gospels were branded heretical for suggesting that salvation comes through inner knowledge, gnosis, rather than external authority. Similarly, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was excluded largely because it presented a female apostle as the recipient of Jesus' most esoteric teachings about soul evolution, teachings that closely mirror Enoch's accounts of the soul's celestial origins and journey through multiple dimensions. The Book of Jubilees, another excluded text sometimes called Lesser Genesis, corroborates Enoch's timeline of pre-Adamic civilizations and cosmic interventions in human development. It describes how celestial beings directly interacted with humanity, transferring spiritual technologies that accelerated consciousness evolution. These accounts were deemed too disruptive to the narrative of human separation from the divine, a separation that required institutional mediation to overcome. What emerges when studying these texts collectively is not random spiritual speculation, but a coherent alternative cosmology that was systematically removed from public access. The Pistis Sophia, a Gnostic text attributed to Jesus' post-resurrection teachings, describes a complex spiritual cosmology with multiple dimensions through which the soul travels, directly paralleling Enoch's description of the soul's journey through various heavenly mansions between incarnations. The Book of the Secrets of Enoch, Slavonic Enoch, further elaborates on the multidimensional nature of consciousness, describing 7 heavens corresponding to different vibrational states of awareness. This sophisticated understanding of consciousness, as existing across a spectrum of frequencies, anticipated quantum physics by millennia and offers a framework for understanding paranormal and mystical experiences that transcend conventional material reality. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947, contained fragments of Enoch texts revered by the Essene community, the mystical Jewish sect widely believed to have influenced early Christian teachings. This discovery confirmed that Enoch's writings were not marginal texts, but central spiritual documents for the very mystical traditions from which Christianity emerged. Their subsequent exclusion from the Bible represents not divine guidance, but political calculation by religious authorities consolidating institutional power. The Nag Hammadi Library revealed the systematic suppression of spiritual knowledge that emphasized direct personal connection with divine consciousness. The Gospel of Philip explicitly states that truth did not come into the world naked, but in symbols and images, suggesting that the literal interpretations promoted by religious institutions deliberately obscured deeper spiritual truths contained in mystical language and symbolism, the very approach found throughout Enoch's writings. What makes these connections particularly significant is their persistence across cultural boundaries. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes interlife states, bardos, that directly parallel Enoch's account of the soul's journey between incarnations. The Hermetic texts of ancient Egypt contain teachings about the divine nature of human consciousness that echo Enoch's description of humans as embodied celestial beings. This cross-cultural corroboration suggests these teachings reflect universal spiritual truths rather than cultural inventions. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, despite its misleading title, more accurately translated as the Book of Coming Forth by Day, contains ritual instructions for navigating consciousness through dimensional transitions. Particularly, the transition called physical death. Its detailed accounts of the afterlife journey share remarkable similarities with Enoch's descriptions, suggesting both texts drew from the same spiritual understanding of consciousness evolution beyond physical embodiment. This interconnected body of suppressed knowledge reveals that the manipulation of spiritual truth was not random but strategic, designed to replace direct spiritual empowerment with dependency on institutional authority. By removing texts that emphasize the divinity within human consciousness, religious institutions position themselves as necessary intermediaries between humanity and the divine, despite these texts clearly teaching that such mediation is unnecessary. The Book of Enoch stands as the cornerstone of this suppressed spiritual framework, providing the cosmic context for understanding human consciousness as fundamentally divine in nature. When studied alongside other apocryphal and Gnostic texts, it reveals not isolated spiritual insights, but a comprehensive alternative to institutionalized religion, one based on direct spiritual knowing rather than hierarchical authority structures. What emerges from this collective body of excluded teachings is a spirituality of empowerment rather than submission, recognizing the divine spark within each being and the capacity for direct communion with higher dimensions of consciousness without institutional mediation. This understanding threatens not true spirituality, but the power structures built upon spiritual dependency and fear-based control systems that have dominated religious institutions throughout history. The rediscovery of Enoch's banned teachings creates a profound transformation in spiritual consciousness, a fundamental shift in how you understand your existence and purpose. When you recognize the truth of your soul's celestial origins, everything changes. The limited human narrative dissolves, replaced by the vast cosmic perspective of an eternal spiritual being temporarily experiencing physical reality for purposes of soul evolution. This awakening to your true nature initiates what spiritual traditions call the Great Remembering, a reconnection with your original awareness that transcends the amnesia of physical incarnation. The impact of this revelation cannot be overstated, as it fundamentally reorganizes your relationship with mortality, suffering, and the apparent limitations of human existence. Fear of death dissolves when you understand that physical existence represents just one brief chapter in your soul's eternal journey through multiple dimensions and embodiments. The most immediate effect of embracing these ancient truths is liberation from fear-based religious conditioning. The concept of eternal punishment for finite actions contradicts the cosmic understanding of soul evolution described in Enoch's texts. When you recognize that what religions call judgment is actually a natural process of energetic resonance and compassionate soul review, the fear that has driven religious compliance throughout history loses its power over consciousness. Religious institutions have maintained control primarily through managing humanity's relationship with death. By positioning themselves as gatekeepers to salvation, they created dependency on external authority for spiritual security. Enoch's teachings dismantle this control mechanism by revealing death as a dimensional transition rather than a final judgment, a doorway to expanded states of consciousness rather than a terminal event determining eternal destiny. The recognition that consciousness transcends physical death transforms how you experience present reality. Challenges and difficulties are no longer meaningless suffering, but purposeful catalysts for soul development. This perspective doesn't eliminate life's difficulties, but transforms your relationship with them, revealing their role in expanding awareness and developing spiritual qualities that transcend a single lifetime. When you embrace the understanding that your essential nature is divine consciousness, temporarily experiencing human form, spiritual practice shifts from seeking external salvation to remembering your true identity. Meditation becomes not just stress reduction, but a technology for accessing your multidimensional awareness. Prayer transforms from petitioning an external deity to communion with the greater dimensions of your own being that exist beyond physical limitation. The cosmic timeline revealed in Enoch's writings liberates consciousness from the compressed spiritual urgency created by single lifetime religious narratives. Your soul's journey spans vast cosmic cycles, with each incarnation building upon previous soul development. This expanded time frame allows for a more compassionate understanding of spiritual growth, recognizing that profound transformation often requires multiple lifetimes of experience and integration. Perhaps most significantly, these revelations dissolve the artificial separation between humanity and the divine that religious institutions have maintained to position themselves as necessary intermediaries. When you recognize divinity as your essential nature rather than an external force requiring institutional access, spiritual authority returns to its rightful place within individual consciousness. This shift does not diminish true spirituality, but rather restores its original empowering nature before institutional distortion. The Book of Enoch reveals that what religions call sin is more accurately understood as vibrational misalignment, consciousness operating at frequencies incompatible with its divine nature. This perspective transforms spiritual growth from rule-following to frequency elevation, with each choice either raising or lowering your soul's vibrational state. Moral development becomes not compliance with external commandments, but alignment with your soul's highest expression. These ancient teachings also transform understanding of humanity's collective purpose. Rather than fallen beings requiring redemption, humans are revealed as cosmic explorers engaged in a grand spiritual adventure of consciousness evolution through material experience. Earth becomes not a testing ground determining eternal destiny, but a specialized environment designed for accelerated soul development through the intensified experiences that physical embodiment provides. Embracing these truths doesn't reject authentic spirituality, but reclaims it from institutional distortion. The profound devotion and communion with divine consciousness that forms the heart of all genuine spiritual traditions remains intact, even enhanced, when freed from fear-based control mechanisms and restored to its original empowering context of direct spiritual knowing. The ultimate impact of these revelations is not just individual transformation, but collective awakening. As more souls recognize their divine nature and cosmic origins, humanity gradually shifts from unconscious spiritual evolution to conscious participation in its own cosmic development. This awakening represents the fulfillment of what spiritual traditions have called the Great Return, consciousness remembering its divine nature after the necessary forgetting that physical incarnation requires. What emerges from embracing these suppressed spiritual truths is not rejection of religion, but its evolution. Transformation from external authority structures to communities of mutual spiritual empowerment based on recognition of the divine spark within each being. True spiritual community becomes possible when founded not on shared beliefs, but on shared recognition of each soul's divine nature and cosmic journey. The greatest gift of Enoch's restored teachings is the return of spiritual sovereignty, recognizing that your connection with divine consciousness requires no external validation or institutional mediation. The direct relationship between your individualized soul and the greater cosmic consciousness from which it emerged remains unbroken despite centuries of institutional interference. This sovereignty doesn't isolate but connects you more authentically with all beings through recognition of your shared divine essence and cosmic origins. In reclaiming these ancient truths, you don't just change spiritual beliefs, you fundamentally transform how consciousness relates to existence itself. The limited human story expands into the cosmic adventure it always was, revealing your life as a purposeful chapter in your soul's eternal journey of consciousness, evolution through the infinite dimensions of cosmic reality. If these revelations about the Book of Enoch and your soul's true cosmic origins have awakened something within you, this is only the beginning. Subscribe now to continue this spiritual journey and unlock more hidden wisdom from ancient texts that religious authorities don't want you to discover. Leave a comment sharing how these truths have shifted your understanding of your own divine nature. The wisdom shared here is meant to be passed on. Help others awaken by sharing this video with someone seeking deeper spiritual truth. Remember, true transformation happens in community, and your insights below might be exactly what another seeker needs to hear today.